Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko part number 273X or by 292. This is an AFGPK is what it is. This is a threshold that does a lot of jobs and does it very elegantly. And this is what it looks like when it arrives to you. The X or the by in the part number is a telltale sign that it's a two-piece system or there's more than one component involved. And that is indeed the case with this. We have this initial piece that's here. I'll remove the masking tape. And I would have set this up prior to starting the video, but I did want to demonstrate what it looks like when it arrives and what you'll need to do to it. This is a threshold that does a couple of jobs, certainly. First of all, it is a thermal break threshold, the most certainly the most important aspect of this threshold. It is a thermal break threshold, and a thermal break threshold incorporates a rigid spline or a very dense thermoplastic piece of material that is intended to insulate, isolate, separate two pieces of metal. The concept with a thermal break is that the spline breaks the transmission of extreme something to the other side of the threshold, and it does so in a two-piece design where you've got one piece, you've got your thermal break spline, then you have your other piece, and we're ready to roll on that. That's inserted. Then you have your other piece. So the way that this works, these thermal break pieces are not always symmetrical, and you don't realize it until you put it together and it doesn't look quite right. What I mean to say by that, when you're putting these together, sometimes the height of the thermal break spline is not equal on both sides, so it might be too high or too low. When you insert it, this piece looks symmetrical. And basically all I'm doing is putting it together. And it does go in as a two-piece design. It is indeed intended to work just the way that you're seeing me put it together. And my insert came a little loose, which is normal. This is your design. This is what a 273 by 292 looks like. Okay, so a few things are happening here. You have a thermal break. I can tell you from first-hand experience that a thermal break threshold, while they are noticeably more expensive, is outrageously successful at deadening the transfer of extreme to extreme. What I mean is, I have been on a job site. First time I sold a thermal break frame was for Catholic Charities in Chicago, and the entire opening was thermally broken. The hollow metal frame was thermally broken. The threshold was thermally broken, which means there's absolute separation from exterior componentry to interior componentry. And this was many years ago, and I thought to myself, boy, I'm really excited to see how that works, see how effective it was. So a couple of months later, after the material was installed, delivered and installed, I knew that I would go back because I was going to be rekeying the entire facility. Supplied the doors, supplied the frames, supplied the doors, all the hardware, and it was part of the contract that at the end I would go back and create the key structure based on the client's requirements for this building on the entire campus. Okay. And I knew I would have time, and I knew that it would be the middle of winter, the dead of winter, where it's dark at 4:30 in Chicago on a Monday, and it was especially cold. It was typical Chicago. So it's January. I left that till the later part of the day when I knew the sun would go down. and it had been brutal. It was single digits, 13 degrees for a high. And sure enough, I got to the opening, and I recognized, I first put my hands down and touched the inside of the threshold, and I said to myself, okay, I expected that to be a lot colder than it really is. And I realized, this is installed down onto a concrete pad, and that is, the cold is obviously transferring, under the floor as well. And I thought, while it's certainly cooler than the ambient temperature, I realized it's substantially warmer than I expected it to be. I then attempted to open the door because I wanted to actually touch the outside portion of the threshold. Immediately, the door doesn't open well because it's frozen shut. Okay, not horribly so, but I get it open, and the outside portion of the threshold is covered in ice. Absolutely ice frozen to the face of the frame, to the threshold, and at that moment I realized how outrageously successful that threshold was, and while it wasn't room temperature because it was sitting on concrete, I realized that it should almost be standard equipment. Then the thought occurred to me, you want to keep that inside part isolated from the outside part, because what you're also going to do is restrict or limit the amount of condensation that will build up on that warmer part. Now, whether it's super cold or super hot, same problem. The superheated is a problem as well. So you can have the reverse application of hot versus cold, cold versus hot, to reduce the amount of condensation buildup that will be around the door and frame. The face of the frame was very warm, and this was in a lower level, basement sort of level application. And I also thought to myself that it would help resist long-term degradation to just rust, because you don't have that condensation buildup as well. So anyway, it's a long way of saying that's how I know they're effective, because I've witnessed it. They are more expensive, but over the lifetime of an installation, I would sure want that piece isolated. Now this is nice because it's also a bump-up style, and it's a very low profile. There is an image down below this video that's going to show us the dimensional properties of this threshold, and we're going to go over it in just a moment. Okay, as we scroll down, we'll see the dimensional properties. We can see that this is 5 9/16 overall width. It's closer to about 5 9/16. That's spot on. That it is a 1/4 inch tall, where the door is going to reside. Down here, seems to be a bit heavy on that. And that it's going to be a 1/2 inch tall over here. So if you have an undercut on your door of something in the range of 3/8 of an inch, and not more than that, this threshold is possibly going to work very well. This would not be a typical threshold for use in standard hollow metal doors and frames, because a standard hollow metal door and frame is going to have a undercut of 3/4 inch, and this threshold would thereby be rendered, quite frankly, just too short for a typical application. And I'm pulling up the catalog. And there are loads of other options that would be a greater height than this model, that are still bump-up style and thermally broken. So the structure of the part number, 273, that's going to be our leading edge piece. That's this. That's just this 1/4 inch half saddle is what this is. Then the other portion would be called the 292. That's this portion here. And the 273 you can certainly use alone to transfer to navigate from two disparate floor surfaces if you're dealing with about a 1/4 inch. A 292, looking at the catalog, is not a portion that I think you would use on its own. It's not listed as a standalone product at all. And I'm looking at the catalog, and it's indeed, again, not listed there However, this design, and Pemko does a very good job at listing all of the possible options, but these pieces just connect together via that spline. So you certainly would be able to, if you needed a custom size, you could take these two parts and mix and match them together. But in the catalog, it is quite clear that they've taken it appears to be every half saddle that they have and connected it to a 292. So as you change that initial part of the part number from 273, and obviously 273, the 3 in that part number is going to give us a tip as to what the overall width is. And just to confirm that they indeed have a 274. Yeah. So you're gonna have 3-inch on the front of that piece. You want it to be a 4-inch on the front of the piece. Change it to a 274. This threshold is thermal break. We've discussed that. It's a bump-up style threshold. Now, bump-up style thresholds are really handy because it gives you an absolute positive face onto which to have the door communicate to. Okay. And that is not slid in the way that it's supposed to be slid in, obviously. I neglected to do that. So the bump-up style is going to provide a very positive stop onto which for your door to be able to seal against. Now that's going to be very advantageous because you get a very positive seal. A lot of customers simply say, I want that bump-up style because I want it to absolutely seal itself where it's supposed to be sealed. I like the concept because it does indeed provide the ability to positively seal on the inside. Then I like to add a door sweep on the outside because I want my line of defense to literally be as close to the outside as possible. So this threshold would have the thermal break underneath the door. I would put a door sweep on the outside, assuming this is for an outswinging door. I would have a sweep on the outside, my thermal break underneath the door, I'd have my bump-up style on the inside, and I would be able to provide a very effective means by which to seal that threshold. Now, the insert, as I'm realizing that I don't have this installed correctly, the inserts generally ship loose, and when you match up the profile of what this looks like in the image and to installing it, your first thought is to literally take the material and try to slide it in. You could take it from me. Sometimes that works. It mostly never works because it's just too tight of a fit, and you can get it pulled in a little bit, but pulling it all the way is going to be pretty tough. The way that this works best is, I've heard a manufacturer call it Christmas treeing it, and I don't know what that means, but you get that stuck in there. But what they've described to me is that you get that placed in. Okay, then, literally, all you're going to do is force it down, and it does indeed come into place, and it secures itself. I'm going to put this down and just push it in with 2 hands. And at this point, it will be quite firm and in place properly. Okay, a little bit of extra length on each end. That's normal. That's expected. But that's what it's supposed to look like, and it's locked in place. You can pull it out easily, not a big deal. It goes in, but you don't try to slide that in. You're not going to get it in. Now, we talked about thermal break. We talked about bump-up style and how to seal that really well at the bottom. Then the next thing to talk about, they call this a latching panic. Latching panic. Panic. Why would you need to panic with a threshold? Don't panic. Well, the reason they call it that is because this feature of a threshold can, and you'll need to confirm compatibility, but can act as a strike for the bottom Pullman latch in a pair, or a single, I guess, but a pair of surface vertical rod exit devices, where you would use this and forego the installation of a strike at the base or at the sill, and you would use this feature and have the Pullman latch directly latch against this. Now, I generally find that latching, panic, latch track, panic are terms that are used. Latching, they're generally a bit higher. Therefore, it's possible that there's going to be less overall physical engagement of the face of the Pullman portion of the latch engaging the threshold because there's less height to this, but that's what it's intended to do. So this is really a trifecta of features that will give you a threshold that's going to work superbly. The insert of this material is what they call PK, Pemko preen. It's Pemko synthetic type of rubber material. Now, this item, so let's dissect the part number. 273 is that leading portion. 292 is the back portion. The A means mill aluminum finish. And let's take a look and see 273 by 292. They can do this in different finishes, obviously, and that's what I'm stammering over. Mill aluminum, black suede powder coat, okay? They're also going to give us a dark bronze, that would be 3. Okay, they have a finish that I'm not familiar with. I'm seeing just now. White suede powder coat. They can powder coat in white. They can do this in a 10BE, which would be a dark bronze powder coated equivalent. So 10B is what they're meaning to say oil rubbed. They make it BE, put an E at the end for equivalent. It's then a powder coated dark brown that's meant to be equivalent or compatible with oil rub bronze. Not uncommon. And that's it. No bright dip gold, no gold anodized, just those finishes. Those gold finishes have fallen out of favor and have been really replaced by black finishes, things of that nature. It'll be back. Just wait for it. So those are the finishes. Now, in terms of the different lengths that are available, these are listed in the site, and everything from 2 foot to 8 foot at this time. We will be in the near future adding them in much longer lengths, just for the sake of doing that. People do want longer lengths than 8 foot without a problem. This is designed to work in conjunction with surface-applied vertical rod exit devices, reading the extended description information. Also used to provide a door stop and seal at the bottom of the door, supplied and drilled with 1024 screws. That's wrong. This just includes 10 by inch and a quarter or so flathead Phillips wood screws. In terms of fasteners, Pemko can handle requests for different fastener types. By all means, if you're going to order the threshold, let's research together what anchors will be best suited. There's no reason for you to have to go to a local hardware store and get some anchors. Pemko can supply this material with different anchors. The ones that I would consider using exclusively would be a machine screw and a lead anchor. You drill that hole for the lead anchor, you seat the lead anchor, and you run your machine screw into it, and you're done. You're secure. Obviously, first you're going to roll that, roll a bead of silicone or some sort of sealant underneath the threshold. First, this is sound tested, air infiltration tested, smoke tested, fire tested, BHMA, Builders Hardware Manufacturer Association certified. Some serrations that are on both sides. I like that a lot in a bump-up style threshold because it resists all of that lateral force that's going to occur over the lifetime of the door. Bam, 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 hitting against it. You don't want the threshold to move. I've seen poor installation result in the threshold literally laterally moving. So you want to have a confluence of those serrations on the bottom to bite into what you're attaching it to, and you want to have a secure anchoring system. That threshold takes a lot of abuse this way, a lot of abuse this way. So be mindful that you need to anchor it so that it's going to stay put. The purpose of honestly buying such an expensive threshold that is so full-featured to then just put it in with honestly, I don't know what you would use these for. In this application, thermal brake, that's exterior. You're not going to probably use thermal brake in an interior application. You know, attesting to how much sound is transmitted through a threshold, it's very likely that you're going to see thermal brake concepts in STC rated material. In fact, you will, in the idea that you'll have different pieces of weather stripping applied together to solve the problem. But I'm thinking exterior when I think thermal brake, and some flathead, wood screws with plastic anchors would not be what I would be using. So let us help you with those anchors, and we'll see if we can update the item to give us some options when it comes to anchoring packages. Now, if you have need for a custom length, by all means let us know by ordering the next longest piece or pieces, and indicate in the comment field the net length that you'd like for the material to come prepped at. And the reason is, this is a 3-foot piece. Okay, the 3 foot's obviously incredibly common. Well, if you had a need for a 34-inch piece, order the next long, and if it's not listed already in the website, I think 34 inch is. But if you have need for a custom length, order the next longest piece or pieces and indicate in the comment field the net length you'd like for us to cut it back to. The reasoning is, it'll save you the trouble of having to cut this, possibly having to re-drill this. If you had to cut this down to 28 inch, you're going to miss a hole. You have to dimple another hole. No holes back here on this end. I'm personally thinking I would be attaching this to the floor. Not that it's going to help keep it in place. I just don't want any sort of movement on the back end, so that I might have things encroach underneath over time. I might run a couple of screws on the back end to keep that secure. I don't see why that would be a problem ultimately. In fact, if you agree, then we can have the factory do a special quote for us to give you some holes dimpled and countersunk back here. It would require an additional cost, but it would be marginal at best. So it'll save you the trouble of having to cut it, possibly re-drill another hole. They're cutting this out of 16-foot length extrusions anyway, so why not just have them cut it to the length you need and save you the trouble of having to cut it. Contractors aren't going to have a trouble cutting aluminum. Sometimes you'll sell a threshold to a homeowner, and they can certainly put the screws down and get it attached, but they don't have a saw, don't have any desire, time, knowledge, skill to cut something down, and don't want to hire a handyman. I got it, 100%. Let us do as much work as possible. Finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Pemko products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog where you can view all things Pemko, a line that is ever evolving, ever getting smarter and more elegant, more responsive to the needs of the marketplace. People over at Pemko are very good, very responsive, customer service, technical support, all excellent across the board. Any questions on the 273x292A FGPK mill finish, thermal brake, Pemko preen insert, or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.